When I was 7 months pregnant, a painful revelation struck. My husband glared at me and declared, "I don't want this baby." Shocked, I shook my head in disbelief. His anger erupted, and he yanked my hair, forcefully pushing me back. My belly hit the hard countertop, and a sharp pain cut through me as tears filled my eyes and I collapsed onto the cold floor. Hello, I'm Elana Brooks, 29 years old. My life was a routine until a mysterious white envelope arrived, inviting me to a high school reunion. Memories of the past, beautiful yet haunting, flooded back. Curiosity drove me to attend, and I found myself at the reunion venue in Ravenhire, amidst laughter and nostalgia. There I saw familiar faces, but it was Lucas Hart, my first love, who caught my eye across the room. Time seemed to stop as he approached, older and more confident, yet instantly recognizable. "Elana," he greeted me, his voice smooth and filled with unspoken words. My heart raced as we began talking, as if no years had passed. We caught up on lives lived separately, his time spent in another city, my steady career. The conversation flowed easily, and laughter filled the gaps between reminiscences. As the night waned, Lucas asked if I'd join him for dinner sometime. Hesitant yet hopeful, I agreed. Leading up to our dinner, I was filled with excitement mingled with nerves. At the restaurant, Lucas's warm smile greeted me, setting me at ease. Initially light, our conversation grew deeper, revealing life changes and past heartaches. Over time, casual meetups evolved. Without realizing it, I found myself drawn back into something I thought I'd left behind. I found myself drawn to Lucas once more, his humor, and the feeling of being truly heard rekindled old emotions. It began as just casual meetups, but over the months, it transformed into something more substantial. Our connection felt fated, as if destiny had brought us back together. This time for a happier conclusion. Lucas consistently made sure I felt valued, showing his attentiveness by surprising me with my favorite coffee on difficult days and listening to my dreams. Feeling safe and genuine, my heart opened up to love once again. Half a year into our renewed relationship, Lucas orchestrated a special outing. He took me to this serene hilltop offering a stunning view of the city beneath the twilight sky. It seemed like a spontaneous outing until I noticed his intense gaze. "Elana," he began, exhaling slowly. I met his eyes, curious but smiling. His hands enveloped mine, his grip firm. "These past 6 months with you have been some of the most precious of my life," he said. My heart stuttered. I never imagined having a second chance with you, and now that I do, I can't let it slip away. To my astonishment, he kneeled before me, presenting a velvet box with a sparkling diamond catching the last light of day. In a steady, emotion-laden voice, he asked, "Elana Brooks, will you marry me?" For a breathless moment, I was paralyzed by disbelief, never having foreseen this moment. But gazing into his hopeful eyes, my heart made the decision. Amid a shaky laugh and tears of joy, I replied, "Lucas, yes. Absolutely yes." The instant he slid the ring onto my finger, hope welled within me. Our wedding was idyllic, surrounded by family, friends, love, and laughter, a jubilant beginning to what felt like the happiest chapter of my life. Lucas clung to every ideal I cherished, loving, attentive, perfect. Soon, discovering I was pregnant, it felt as though life had reached its zenith. Sitting on our bed, eyes fixed on the pregnancy tests, 2 lines that confirmed it, emotions swirled, excitement, anxiety, hope. Tenderly placing a hand on my stomach, I whispered, "I'm going to be a mother." That evening, when Lucas returned home, my excitement brimmed over. "I have to tell you something," I declared, my voice trembling in anticipation. His brow arched with curiosity. "What is it?" Gently, I placed his hands over my stomach. "We're having a baby." His expression was unreadable at first, then slowly illuminated with a smile. "Elana, that's incredible," he whispered, enveloping me in a warm embrace. Relief washed over me as I shut my eyes, fleetingly believing life would be more magnificent than I had ever dreamed. But I was wrong, grievously so. Initially, I tried dismissing Lucas's behavior as stress. Though he seemed formidable and unwavering outwardly, a noticeable change in his demeanor hinted at something amiss. Distractedness and coldness emerged. Initially, I ignored factors like late nights at work, his excuses, and increasing drinking habits. He's just preparing for fatherhood. I reassured myself, he'll adjust, things will turn around. Yet, an unsettling doubt took root. One evening, Lucas returned reeking of alcohol, his tie awry and expression harrowed. Cautiously, I inquired, "Lucas, have you been drinking?" His fingers rubbed his temples exasperatedly. "Yeah, just a little. Work is brutal." With concern, I countered, "I just don't think you should drink every night, especially with a baby on the way." His demeanor darkened. "So what? Are you checking up on me?" The sharpness in his words made me wince. Quickly, I retorted, "No, of course not. I worry about you." His jaw clenched momentarily before dismissing my concerns with a dry chuckle. "You worry too much." Watching him vanish into the bedroom, unease knotted in my gut. This wasn't the Lucas I loved. In ensuing weeks, his drinking persisted. Lucas began returning home later, barely acknowledging my presence upon arrival. Attempts at discussing his struggles were shrugged off with a terse, "I'm tired. Drop it." Convincing myself this was just temporary pressure, that he'd rebound, the chasm between us yawned wider. Then came the night it all surfaced. That evening had begun unremarkably. Lucas staggered home late, his tie undone with his usual alcohol-tinged aura. Awaiting him in the kitchen, resolution stilled me. I need to address this tonight. Fix our situation. When he entered, I inhaled sharply. "Lucas, we need to talk." He exhaled heavily, tossing his keys. "Not now, Elana. I'm exhausted." Despite his dismissive tone, I stood resolute, blocking his path. "No, Lucas. This can't wait. You're drinking too much. Every night, you return home late, and I can't shake the feeling that you're avoiding me." His face grew stern as he asked, "Why do you always make things worse?" His voice was chilly, almost emotionless. I swallowed hard. "I'm not trying to," I replied. He cut me off, his voice rising in anger. "You're always complaining. I work all day, and I come home to you nagging me." I felt a tightness in my chest. "This isn't nagging, Lucas. I'm your wife. I love you. I just want to know what's wrong." He moved closer, his eyes icy and unreadable. "What's wrong?" He laughed sharply. "You, this life, this mess." His words barely sank in before his hand struck my face, sending pain exploding across my cheek, and I stumbled backward in shock. Lucas froze, his hand still poised midair, his expression devoid of regret or shame, filled with something unrecognizable. For the first time in our marriage, I saw a man I didn't know, someone I had never truly known. Tears filled my eyes as I hoped for an apology, an acknowledgement that this was a mistake. But he turned away, and in that moment, a part of me broke. I wasn't just hurt, I was terrified. And the most heartbreaking part? I still loved him. After that night, I convinced myself it was a mistake, that Lucas was just stressed, drunk, not himself. I wanted to believe it wouldn't happen again. But reality was much harsher. It wasn't an isolated incident. The slap turned into a shove into a harsh grip on my arm, followed by yelling, insults, and anger that erupted without warning. It felt like walking on eggshells. Some nights, he'd come home as the kind Lucas I remembered. Other times, he was unrecognizable, unpredictable in his fury. I began hiding the bruises, wearing long sleeves, avoiding people. My home felt like a prison, but I told myself I had to stay strong for my baby. Despite the pain from my bruises and breaking heart, I persisted. One evening, Lucas came back more intoxicated than ever, tie loosened, breath heavy with whiskey. I was in the kitchen making dinner, trying to appear normal. The door slammed, a heavy silence following. "Elana," his low voice was menacing. I turned slowly, heart racing. "Yes." He moved closer, eyes cold, sharp, devoid of warmth. "You're ruining my life," he muttered. I frowned. "Lucas, what do you mean?" He exhaled sharply, fists clenched. "I never wanted this." He grabbed a glass from the counter and hurled it across the room, the crash resounding. I flinched, recoiling as he shoved me forcefully against the kitchen counter, pain shooting up my back. But worse, a searing pain erupted in my stomach. I gasped, hands flying to my belly. Something was horribly wrong. "Lucas," I whispered, "something's wrong." For a moment, he stood, then to my horror, turned and walked away, as if I meant nothing, as if he didn't care if I lived or died. That's when realization struck. If I didn't leave that night, I would die. The pain in my stomach was excruciating, a deep, sharp agony, making it hard to breathe. I reached out, calling to Lucas, but he was already leaving, his footsteps receding. He didn't glance back, showing no concern. Tears blurred my sight as I fought to stay upright, knowing I needed help, needed to escape. I pressed a trembling hand against the counter and forced myself upright. Every movement sent new waves of pain through me, but I had no choice. I staggered to the door, grabbing my coat and phone with shaking hands, knowing I had to move swiftly. Outside, the cold night air hit me as I battled dizziness, barely reaching the street before my knees buckled. Cars sped past, unyielding, until finally, a taxi pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged man, rolled down his window. "You okay, miss?" he asked. I gasped, clutching the door handle. "Hospital," I whispered weakly. "Please, just take me to the hospital." He must have seen the pain etched on my face because he asked no more questions. As soon as I collapsed into the seat, my body gave way, and I leaned heavily against the door, clutching my belly. "Hold on," the driver urged. "We'll be there soon." But each second dragged endlessly. The pain worsened as my vision blurred, conscious slipping away. Just as the hospital lights came into view, everything faded to black. I awoke to a soft beeping, the sterile scent of the hospital air filling the room, my memories of the night returning, along with the pain. Panic engulfed me as I abruptly sat up, causing the room to whirl. "Elana, take it easy. You just woke up," a gentle voice advised. I turned to see a doctor beside my bed. Dread settled in my stomach. "No, no, no," I muttered, clutching the doctor's arm, my voice quavering. "What happened to my baby?" The doctor's expression softened, becoming sadder. "Elana," she hesitated, "I'm so sorry. We couldn't save your baby." My world crumbled. Everything within me felt shattered. My chest tightened with ragged breaths. "No," I whispered, shaking my head vigorously. "You're wrong." I pressed my hand against my abdomen, but it was flat, devoid of life. A sob escaped as reality settled. I had lost my baby, and Lucas was responsible. Weak and motionless on my hospital bed, a police officer entered. I barely acknowledged him. My baby was gone, and my life felt meaningless. "Miss Brooks," the officer began, "the hospital contacted us after you were admitted. Your injuries indicate domestic abuse." I recoiled at those words, having told no one, spent months concealing it, making excuses, pretending it wasn't real. Now there was no room for pretending. I nodded slowly. The officer drew closer. "Do you wish to press charges?" I thought of Lucas, of how he left me there in torment, never checking if I survived. A raging fury I never knew surged within. I lifted my head to meet the officer's gaze. "Yes," I declared. "I want him arrested, and this time, I wouldn't back down." Days blurred after losing my baby, an unbearable void, a deep, persistent ache. Yet beneath the sorrow, something else surged: rage. Lucas had taken everything, broken and beaten me, destroying the life growing within, and I couldn't let him escape accountability. At the hospital, the police recorded my statement. I recounted it all: the drinking, anger, abuse, how he slammed me into the counter, aware I was pregnant, witnessing my collapse, walking away. The officer nodded, penning notes. "We'll issue a warrant for his arrest." But I needed more, proof that Lucas wasn't just abusive, but monstrous. I needed to find the other woman he'd been cheating with. Her name surfaced through the police. They discovered Lucas had been with another woman for months. Initially, I loathed her, yet something told me she might be another victim, too. I tracked her address and went to see her. She opened the door, fear evident. Her eyes acknowledged me. "You're Lucas's wife," she realized. Swallowing my anger, I steadied my voice. "I need to talk to you," I urged. "It's about Lucas." Amber hesitated, then let me in, sitting in silence initially. Then she broke down, crying. "I didn't know," she confessed, covering her face. "I swear I didn't know what he planned." I tensed. "What do you mean?" Wiping her eyes, she drew a breath. "I overheard him talking," her voice quivered. "Planning to get rid of you. He took out a life insurance policy in your name." Chills enveloped me. Lucas wasn't just abusive. He planned to kill me. Amber showed me text messages where Lucas spoke of not needing me, wishing my disappearance, and soon having money to start over. It was all the evidence needed to expose Lucas as not just dangerous, but a fledgling murderer. Breathing deep, I met Amber's gaze. "If you want to make things right, help me," I implored. She nodded, fear replaced by resolve. "Let's take him down." The evidence against Lucas was irrefutable. With Amber's messages, my hospital records, and my statement, we had all we needed to ensure he could never harm anyone again. The police released a warrant, but Lucas vanished once aware I'd survived. He abandoned his job, his apartment, his entire existence at Ravenhire. For weeks, the police pursuit ensued, but Lucas evaded continuously. Sleep eluded me, aware he roamed free, yet fear dissipated. Only anger and determination remained. One night, Detective Harris, leading the case, called me. "Elana," he announced urgently, "we found him." My heart skipped. "Where?" "A motel outside the city," he briefed. "We're moving in for the arrest now." I exhaled shakily. This was the moment of awaited justice. Found alone in a decrepit motel, Lucas had been deserted by Amber, his funds depleted, cornered by police. When officers stormed in, he resisted, attempted deception, but when shown the texts, insurance fraud, and abuse reports, he knew the game was over. As authorities detained him, he tried. As they escorted him away in handcuffs, he glanced up and for the first time, I saw fear in Lucas's eyes. He knew he was defeated. Lucas Hart had finally been captured, but I understood this was not the end. Justice needed to be served, and I needed to listen to the verdict myself. I had lost a child and nearly my own life, but it was now time to end this nightmare permanently. The day of the trial, the courtroom was filled to capacity. The atmosphere was heavy with tension as everyone in town awaited the truth about Lucas Hart. Sitting at the witness stand, I held tightly to the chair as the prosecutor questioned me. "Elana, could you describe what happened on the night of the attack?" Swallowing hard, I held steady. He threw me against the counter. I replied with a firm voice. I had pleaded for help, but he had simply walked away. In the defendant's seat, Lucas sat unemotionally and refused to make eye contact. But I didn't need him to look. I knew he was trapped. Evidence from the prosecution piled up. Text messages, the insurance fraud, hospital records, each piece dismantling his scheme. Then came the decisive blow, a recording Amber had stealthily captured from one of her last conversations with Lucas. His words echoed in the courtroom. "Finally, goodbye, I don't need the brat." A collective gasp swept through the crowd as Lucas's face went pale. His fate was sealed. When it was Lucas's turn to speak, he rose, his voice cold and dismissive. "This is absurd," he claimed, shaking his head. "I loved my wife. This is merely a misunderstanding." My stomach churned as I knew he was still lying. However, the judge saw through Lucas's deception. Lucas's attorney attempted to argue for a lesser punishment, insisting that stress had led him to act out and he never intended to harm me. Yet, the prosecutor quickly countered. Lucas Hart not only harmed his wife, the prosecutor declared, he nearly killed her and resulted in the loss of their unborn child. Silence fell over the room. The judge took a deep breath before addressing Lucas. "Do you have any final words before I pronounce your sentence?" Lucas clenched his jaw, his eyes ablaze with anger. But for the first time, he had no control and no escape. The judge's voice resonated throughout the courtroom. Lucas Hart, you are guilty of multiple charges including attempted murder, domestic violence, and insurance fraud. As the ruling was delivered, Lucas's jaw tightened, and I sat in suspense. For these crimes, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole. Another sharp gasp reverberated through the room. Panic-stricken, Lucas looked up, and as he was escorted away, he called out my name, desperately pleading. However, I remained unfazed, refused to shed tears, simply observed him vanish. For once in many years, I felt liberated. Lucas wouldn't harm me again. Although free, I was far from okay. The trauma Lucas inflicted wasn't only physical, it left indelible scars within. Healing would not happen overnight. After the trial, I returned to live with my parents. I needed time to mourn, to rebuild. Some nights, nightmares woke me screaming. On some days, getting out of bed seemed impossible. Slowly, however, I fought back, started therapy, and laid bare the pain I had long hidden. I learned it wasn't my fault, and, most critically, forgave myself. One day, staring at my reflection, I questioned my future. I had survived, but I desired more than mere existence. I wanted to truly live. Determined, I trained to become an advocate for domestic abuse survivors, sharing my story to aid others in escaping their nightmares. Initially, I feared love was beyond reach, too broken, too scarred, impossible to love. But then I met Daniel Cross, gentle, patient, safe. He stood by me unconditionally. Gradually, I opened up, divulged my entire story, and one day realized I was no longer afraid. Years slipped by, and then an unexpected miracle occurred. I became pregnant. Holding the test results, my hands trembled with fear until Daniel reassured me. We'll treasure this child together. Elana, I swear. For the first time in years, I embraced safety. Cradling my child, I recognized my survival, and I vowed never to let the past define me again. This narrative isn't solely about pain. It's about resilience, about discovering strength to leave, knowing no matter how shattered one feels, healing is possible. Ultimately, surviving is the greatest victory, and I endured. If this story resonated with you and found inspiration, please like this post to show support. Share your thoughts. I would love to hear them. Subscribe for more empowering stories. Your support is invaluable. Thank you for being part of the journey.